Afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock on a Thursday. I'm looking at this background that you see behind me. Absolutely spectacular, beautiful day here in Neisner. Sitting in front of a beautiful open door, can see the water coming into the lagoon. The sea looks very inviting, and things are certainly happening here. Super excited to actually be chatting today because there are a couple of things that I think are really, really important that we want to put out there and make sure that people are understanding, right? Because if we can understand those kinds of things, we can make sense of them, and we can actually therefore bring them into our own listing. So whether you're a first-time Airbnb person or short-term rental, or whether you're an expert and you've got multiple listings, whether you're sitting on the fence, whether you should maybe do a listing or not, or add it to your portfolio, then this is actually the opportunity for us to have that conversation. So for the last few times, I've brought a whole lot of some of my clients and students along with me to share their journey and their story of how they had to have added an Airbnb element to their portfolio. Some of them primarily do Airbnb. Some of them have added them to their multi-lets or to their normal buy-to-rent properties. And in all of them, actually, they are making a success out of it. It's working for them. They are generating extra income. And it's a really good opportunity because this is something that is really growing. And I want to share some of those statistics with you today about how quickly Airbnb is growing. I remember, I think it was during COVID, when we had the first COVID hit, and obviously that whole crash of Airbnb, and everyone said, Airbnb is dead, it will never work again. Well, just in the 2022, 2023 year, Airbnb has seen the greatest supply of growth of new listings coming into the market. And I obviously want to touch base on that. But more importantly, this today is just me and you. So I thought, let me not bring any more guests. Let me just open up this conversation to you watching this so that you can actually ask me what it is that you want. Every week I get a handful of people reaching out and saying, Robin, we found this unit. Please, can we set up a time to talk and you can give me some advice? And, I've got some questions to ask. And I need to answer them and say, I actually don't have the time or the effort to, or the bandwidth actually, to just randomly answer a whole lot of questions. And I point them to this chat that we're having. And I say, this is a great opportunity for you to ask the questions because you've got me here and I'm committed totally to what you're asking, and I can give you the answers there. Because to actually go and engage a coach or a consultant to actually answer the questions probably isn't going to meet your pocket, but also, this is a free opportunity to do so. So really in the chat here, ask those questions so that I can actually give you my insight into that. And you can apply it to your own listing, right? So while that's happening, and while maybe you're thinking about what question you want to look at, there are just a couple of things that I really would like to bring in today. Stuff which I've noticed over the last while, some interesting strategies which I see emerging. And of course, this is what we're chatting about here, not only answering your questions, but giving you some insight into the deep dives of what's going on in Airbnb, the short-term letting, and where those challenges are. And I think one of the things I want to chat about, actually, I'm going to just pull up this kind of like presentation here at the same time, right? Is we talk about Airbnb, but in many ways it's so much more than that. So I want to keep referring that when I say to Airbnb, I'm talking about short-term rentals, talking about booking.com, talking about Vrbo, because I am also listing on Vrbo, which is another platform, but it's an international one. There's a strategicness about it, but it all requires a bit of tweaking, right? They all are different from that. And I just want to touch base on that. But that's very much as well what is important is that we actually look to see how to leverage and monetize the diversity of what is out there and how to take advantage of that. And I've got some statistics there about how much growth there is and just that supply that's really impacting us in the world, right? And the thing that I've kind of really realized and frustrates me most about Airbnb, especially Airbnb, is they just seem to think this is an American phenomenon because they keep referring to the American scenario. They don't often touch on what's going on in the rest of the world. And as much as, that information would be useful, sometimes what their stats are don't necessarily apply to us here. And I think that's also useful for us to bear in mind, especially when we're taking what they're saying. Like I heard a whole lot of people saying, their bookings are down, the occupation percentages are lower. And I'm like, from October, November, December, January, February, I've been at 100% occupancy rate, right? 100%, not 50%, which we're going to look at is the kind of like average norm at the moment, is 100%. And, you might say, oh, Robin, it's so easy for you to get 100% if you make it so cheap. Well, I'm going to show you that I don't make it cheap and I still get really high occupancy rates. So again, it's those tricks and, things that we're doing that make the difference. And I think that's where this all lies. So coming across, for many of you that's often where a whole lot of the content is. There are those courses. It's all there. You can go and access. But I just want to share a bit of information about this one here, because I'm going to share some of the stats about you, or stats with you about this. This here is one of the properties that I've got in Cape Town. I bought it about a year and a half ago. But I thought, well, we often talk about making money, et cetera, and I just wanted to share with you, here are some stats. Here are this here is January and this is February. So this is current and up to date. Actually, sorry, it wasn't this one. This is a different one. I'm going to just go show you this one here. So this is that property, because I'm going to share with you another one. So there we can see 111,000 Rand gross rental in just that month, right? From just that one property. So that property probably rents for about 25,000 Rand a month rent, but you can really get a good sense of what that gross income is. And of course, we all know that gross income is one thing, but we want to know, well, what happens when we take the cleaning fees off? And Airbnb takes a big chunk of their platform fees. So here we can see here, 19,000 Rand is what Airbnb has taken. Cleaning fees, we can see what they've taken, and what I'm left with, the payout, less. So this is the net payout, is 90,000 Rand, right? That was January. Now, December was even higher, right? Because that's the high season and had Christmas and all that. So that was, I think, about 140,000. So here we're seeing 90,000. Here we can see February, which is a little bit lower, which would be expected, slightly, less of the high season, the rates drop, but still, on a 25,000 Rand rent property, you're netting that 72,000 of income. I mean, that's just amazing. I'm continuously amazed at how this can generate, that kind of income. My general rule of thumb when I work with people is to say that if you're getting 10,000 Rand or 20,000 Rand rent on your property from a normal long-term rent, you should be getting double that, right? At least. And in the high season, of course, you can argue and say this is a touristy place, which, yes, it is a beachfront, and we can chat about that. I want to prove to you that it's not only the case. But still, in those high seasons, we're generating 4 to 5 times that monthly rental that you would normally gross, right? And of course, then you can take off some of that. But isn't that just amazing? I mean, I love that. And of course, that's just ka-ching the whole time coming through, right? 4 weeks ago, you would have, also, if you had seen this, and you should go look at it. Ridwan was telling us, so one of my other students who also did the course, and, he generated, 500,000 Rand in 1 month in one property. Absolutely incredible. Now, that property, sure, was renting at 135,000 Rand per month. But the point is a lot of money can be made. And it's just, again, incredible, right? So I also wanted to share with you another example of a different property that rents for only 10,500 Rand per month. But you can see here also January and February that it clears 35. So in other words, this generated 25,000 Rand profit. Well, okay, let's take off electricity of 800 Rand, but all the cleaning is done, all the electricity we've sorted out. So you're still making 20,000 Rand off a 10,000 Rand rental. So that's amazing, right? So I'm renting it from a landlord for 10,000 Rand. I'm putting on Airbnb and generating 25,000 Rand. In that case, that was January. For February, a little bit less again that we would expect. But as you can see, it still generates a significant income, right? On a 10,000 Rand, I'm clearing then 15, 16. You have 10 of those, and that's 100,000 Rand that you're generating in that month profit. So, and it's very doable, right? We all know that scaling a rent-to-rent is totally doable because the amount of capital that you need is not that high. So I really just looked at, wanted to share with you proof, right? And this is up to date. So this is up to 2 days ago, the end of February. That's the data that it's giving. And some of it's fairly self-explanatory. On the top left here, the gross amount that they're paying. And then obviously they're sharing with you how much of that is cleaning, how much of that is the service fee. Because remember that whether you're using Airbnb or Booking.com, they're still going to be taking between 15 and 80% of your gross rental income, right? And they take that off before they distribute the payout to you. So That's the payout that's coming. And obviously here that you're seeing here is net payout without the cleaning fee. So they've actually already taken off the cleaning fee to just demonstrate to you what that payout is. So that, again, is just like really, really great to see that all those kinds of things are possible. So I do want to just share with you some of these other stats then. So let's take a look here. And while I start sharing with you about all the kind of the competition that's coming, that's what I want to talk about most today is, there is a growth. So let's take a look here. It says here, global short-term rental supply reaches record levels in 2022. So that means that in 2022, there was a growth of amount of people putting their units on Airbnb, Booking.com, and of course, short-term rental, right? And that tells us that there's a growing business here and the competition is getting more intense. And of course, we need to know how to dominate that, or else we're just going to be caught up in what's going on with everyone else. So here is another stat, which basically is showing that it's happening throughout the world, right? That throughout the world in different years, we're seeing that growth increasing. And this is an interesting stat that it says here, 54% of Airbnb listings have been added since 2020. So that means that half of all the listings we've seen on Airbnb have only been added in the last 3 years, or 2 if we're really thinking, because 2020, we've got 21, 22. So, that's a lot of Airbnb people. And people have always said to me, oh, Robin, there's so much competition, and there is, right? There's a lot of competition all around us. And I've always said 2 actual things I've said. I don't mind there be competition because all I have to do is just be better than them and I'll do very well. And the second thing is that here in South Africa, man, South Africans are terrible at short-term rentals because they don't know how to do it. They don't treat it professionally. They treat it as if they want to make lots of money, but they aren't actually looking at it strategically. Their photos are bad. They're poor messaging. They don't take advantage of a whole lot of the automation that is available. So I'm not surprised then that people like myself, and obviously the people who do our courses and coaching, that get the kind of results that we do, which is very high occupancy rates between 90 and 100%. And from day one, we're making money. And of course, we're really clever and strategic around it, right? So that's just something that we really need to keep putting in place. This is, I guess, the real part, which is the insight that we want to take away. So we've seen here that, so for example, we're looking at the supply and demand. Supply is how many more units are coming to the market, and the demand is what is the growth in the amount of people looking for Airbnb. And here, 5.5% increase of people looking, but there were a lot more units brought to the market, which means that if this continues, there's going to be more units than there are people looking for units, which means occupancy rates are going to come down, which means being competitive is going to be more important than anything else. Then being more professional is going to be more important. And I think those are the kinds of things that we're actually looking at, which are going to be more and more important. And I want to share some of those that within the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've noticed are making a significant difference and actually require us to really up our game, or we are going to be left behind, right? And that's really, really important. So we've got a question here from Mpho. So let me just put it on our chat. So we can just see that there. I think we should be able to, just want to see if it comes up. Oh, wait, here we go. Great, actually I'm going to take that one off. So here's a question. So I'd like to attract more long-term stays in my Airbnb, as I realized they are less work intense opposed to 2 or 3 day stays. So what strategies can I adapt to my listing? So there's 2 things around this important. The first thing is that I actually just want listings that bring me money and with the least effort. So if it is that you are saying that 2 to 3 day stays are intense or too much effort, I would first want to check what are you doing that is not efficient in that, right? So I have 1 day bookings. I'm open to it. Instant book, so someone can book on 6 o'clock that night to check in at 7 o'clock that night. I need it to be automated so that I can take advantage of that. I need it to be automated that my cleaners come in the next day and sort stuff out without me even having to manage it, be there, do all those things. That means I can take advantage of what you're not wanting to take advantage of. You're saying you want longer stays, 100%, we can chat about that. But if the demand out there is not for longer stays and you strategically position yourself for longer stays, you're leaving all the money on the table for people like me to say, thank you, I'll take the one night stays because my systems are going to cover all of that and make it work, right? Like I said, whether I've got a 1 day or a 3 day, it actually doesn't make a difference to me. Because those systems are in place and are strong. I don't have to manage my cleaners because they know what to do. I don't have to message them, tell them. I don't have to tell my guests how to get into the place or exit the place. And sometimes there are those curveballs where someone gets lost or my instructions aren't clear enough. But all I do is I take the learning out of that and I then say, okay, well, if this didn't work for that client or that guest, what do I need to do to improve it so that I can keep creating a high degree of automation? Now, as you mentioned, you would like to know how you can actually increase to more long-term stays. So how you could do it is just offer better prices. So you could say my one night is full price, 2 nights are 20% less. Any night longer than 3 nights is increasingly discounted. So that's what you do on the pricing. Then you put that into your listing heading or into your listing description that says stay for longer than 3 nights and you get an extra 20% off. Because we've always said before that people will choose your place based on price if value is not visible. In other words, if they can't see why they should pay more to come to your place, then they're going to choose a place based on price. And that, unfortunately, is the reality, especially here in South Africa. I keep saying that, I've had guests who you could have 2 places. The one looks way better than the other one. And the one that is way better is 10 Rand more expensive, 10 Rand more expensive than the other one. But guests still choose the cheaper one, even if it's just $10 because they say it's cheaper, even though the value is very different. So then target price, but don't just wait for it, make it happen. In your settings, you can go in and say, if someone chooses or stays for 3 nights or more, add this discount. 4 nights or more, add this discount. But like I said, don't just leave it there, put it in your title that says, discounted rates for more than 3 days. I actually prefer to not put it in the title. In my titles, you'll see I have discounted rates, but I don't say what they are because I change them frequently. And I don't want to get caught where I'm saying one thing and I'm not producing, right? So I say discounted rates in my titles, but in my description, I'll say stay for longer and get even more discounts. And that then directs them to that so that they can, that it's clearly visible that they can do that. And of course, straight out of that, they are more likely to rent for a longer period of time. But again, I want to stress to you that, like as a coach in the Airbnb, you're going to be leaving money on the table if you're not also accessing the shorter term rentals, because we're still seeing at this moment, especially in South Africa, unless people are coming on holiday, if you're just as in doing a normal Airbnb rental, the stays of 1 night to 3 nights is where the majority of all of the bookings happen. Because why would you stay for longer than 3 nights if it wasn't a break or a holiday that you were having, right? So that's what we're wanting to make sure that we've got in place, that you're taking advantage of that. So take a look at all that automation and make sure that you're really accessing that to make that work, right? Okay, so let's take a look at that. So we've got here from Timura. Let's take a look here. Okay, would you recommend co-host for someone who doesn't have the capital for rental arbitration? So this is rental arbitrage. If so, what tips can you give to find properties? So rental arbitrage is when you're renting from the landlord and renting to, or putting it online with Airbnb, making sure you have written permission from the landlord to do so, right? Be clear about it, because most rental contracts will state as a standard default format that if that the tenant cannot sublet the premises unless with the written permission from the landlord. It's literally written just like that. What is really interesting is I asked ChatGPT, and if you don't know what ChatGPT is, definitely Google it. It's AI. I said, please give me a convincing argument that will allow or convince a landlord to rent their apartment to me on rental arbitrage so that I can rent it and put it on Airbnb. And the chat came back saying, I'm a language database and therefore do not promote anything illegal or contradictory to the norms. and because it was saying that rental arbitrage is not allowed, is illegal. So after it had this whole disclosure, I went and said, hey, chat, thank you, but I actually have the written landlord's permission. So it comes up and says, okay, well, bearing that in mind, then here is the following response. So fascinating, right? If you don't know what ChatGPT is, you really do need to learn it, or at least go and play around with it, right? So this isn't about ChatGPT, which is about the AA language database by Microsoft, I think, at the moment, but super, super interesting. Watch out, it's going to change the game of what we're doing. But let's take a look here. So would you recommend co-hosting for someone who doesn't have the capital for rental arbitrage? So there are two things here: is how you find properties and co-hosting. Now, co-hosting doesn't mean, well, I'm assuming what you mean in here is, well, hang on, co-hosting is when you're hosting with someone else. Now, to do rental arbitrage, you do not have to co-host, because co-hosting implies someone else is the host and you are just managing it for them. Now, that you can certainly do, but you don't have to do it that way for rental arbitrage. You could just lease the property directly from a landlord and actually just then be the sole host. The only reason you'd want to do a co-host is if, let's say, you're approaching someone who is already a host and you're saying, hey, I will take over all of the sweat equity part of what you're doing. In other words, I'll manage all that and we will split the profits that we're making in a certain way. So they still stay as the primary host, and then you are as a co-host on top of that, and then you work out some arrangement how to make that work. So I don't want to get caught into why you're wanting to do the co-host. This is obviously around, I don't have the capital. In other words, I don't have the capital to go and actually do the full rental on my own from someone else. So how I would look at that is I would actually say to someone, you have this hopefully furnished apartment. I would like to run it as a business, as Airbnb. How about we do it this way, that I enter into a lease agreement with you. Let's say that the rent is 10,000 Rand, that I will pay you 6,000 Rand per month, guaranteed, and you will get the first 4,000 Rand from any profits being generated to make it up to the 10, and then after that, we split it 50-50, whatever the profits may be. So that means that you may be factoring that if you don't get the 10,000 Rand, because you're worried that you might not get that, at least you're going to cover the 6, and that's the risk that the landlord takes. But there's so much on the upside, which is you're going to give them all the profit till the full rental price and then profit over and above that, right? So there's ways that you can structure sometimes what we call like a waterfall process. Once this profit has been reached, then it triggers the next thing. So you could do it that way, where you say, let's actually be partners in this. There's a lower rental, but then you get profits. You could also do the reverse, which is, hey, you normally charge 10,000. How about I give you 12,000, which is above market rental, but then you keep it all yourself, right? And that's another way of structuring it. So it depends on your skills and your competency in that to see which one you are most wanting to do. And that can actually be that creative way of structuring it. So there are lots of different ways. Decreased rental, sharing the profit, or decreased rental with a waterfall to get to the perceived rental, and then you take profit. So again, just play around with those and see if something out of that can make sense, right? Okay, let's see if there are any more chats. And of course, if whatever I've shared isn't clear enough, then just let me know and I can certainly re-explain that. Because I do know that for a lot of people, part of the promise of the Airbnb model, especially this rental arbitrage, which is how I started in the Airbnb, is it means you don't have to go and buy something, but you can actually generate income from day one, good income, and you don't have to put a lot of money in, right? And if you know my story, I first rented unfurnished apartments, but then I had to fork out 70 to 100,000 on furniture, which now I wouldn't do unless I'm buying the apartment. But it's a way to start. You can rent a furnished apartment that's literally rent ready and put that on Airbnb and generate the income from that. And, from day one, you are making money. So super easy ways to do that. And I get that that's usually because people don't have the capital to either go and take out a full rental and buy furniture, especially if you're starting, right? I'm a big fan of the least amount of risk. So I love the rental arbitrage like that when you start off, even if I'm just breaking even if like worst case scenario, I'm breaking even, I'm learning so much here that it just means I'm going to keep improving. So the risk is so low because I'm breaking even. So everyone's getting paid. Yes, I might be frustrated because I'm not making money yet. But the thing is, you're learning so much at the same time that you're just going to increase and then you're going to make more money. Worst case scenario is you exit, right? We know that special clause, that says that in the event that I wish to terminate this lease early, if it is that I find a replacement tenant agreed on by an outside third party, then there are no penalty costs to me as the exiting tenant. So all of that stuff is sorted and can be managed, and that therefore allows you to avoid this risk, right? Because that's what we're talking about, is the risk of how do I start and get going, especially when I don't have a whole lot of capital. And you might say, especially when I don't have a bond or a deposit to put down and a whole lot of those things, this is the way to go about it, because you can learn so much through this process. And I'm a big fan of learn the skills so that you can dominate, instead of just making massive mistakes. And I think that's a really big one. So, okay, can I go more in depth about these strategies? So which one, Tamara? Just give me a sense of which strategies, please. So here is the question. Oh, no, not that one. Okay, that looks like someone. I'm going to come to that one. It just popped in. So let me take this one. So while we just chat about the next question from Anonymous, just can you let me know which strategies you're referring to there so that I can answer that, please? Right, so I'm the type of guy who's probably looking for a partner to Airbnb my property for me. Where can I find good people like this? Well, Facebook user, you probably just speaking to the person before, Tamara, who was actually saying, well, how do I find someone whose property I can take over an Airbnb? So, let's take a look at that. So if I'm assuming here that you're the person who says, I have an Airbnb property and you want someone who can manage it for you, right? Yeah. So there are actually a lot of people, and you'll be surprised that most people who do my courses and who are on these kind of chats they're the ones who are looking for landlords who will rent an apartment to them or do some kind of partnership with them to actually make this work. So, one of the ways I would certainly look at it is to just share that post and say, hi, I have a property in this area. It could be good for Airbnb. If any of you are looking to do a partnership or to rent an apartment to run on Airbnb, I'm open to have that conversation with you, and then actually see what comes out of that. Not a caution. So some of the tips that you must think about is just to get clear for yourself if this is something which you are basically just wanting security of rental. In other words, you understand the benefits of being the landlord in the scenario, right? Your property is going to get looked after way better than if it was a normal guest. There's going to be less wear and tear. There's the damage policy in place by Airbnb. There is more likely of less vacancy. Remember that most of the time we're kind of factoring in that we're going to have to deal with a month of vacancy every year in a normal long-term let. We understand that if we're doing Airbnb, like for example, my one landlord, I think I've been their tenant for 6 years now. So she's sitting sweet because she never has a vacancy month. She knows, I love it when they come and visit or have to fix something that's like they've just replaced the geyser. They love walking through and saying like, oh my God, this is it's new still. And I'm like, well, of course, because my business depends on it, right? So being a landlord of a property and getting someone else to run Airbnb, and it's not a shabby idea, because they're going to keep it up because it's their business. And if it's successful, they're going to be your tenant for a long time. No one's going to spend all that time and effort in building an Airbnb track record to then just give it up after a year. So you could be setting yourself up for a long-term strategy. So I'll definitely keep looking into that, right? Okay. Paul, I don't know how to connect. Okay, she says connect with them. I don't know how to do that. Facebook user, there are these people who are messaging me saying, who is this person? We want to be able to chat to you. So I don't know how to do that. Can't tell you unless you put your name in this chat, but then you might find you're going to have it inundated with a whole lot of people messaging you saying, please, give it to me. We'd love to chat. So there we go. Maybe you've got a solution. If you want, you can certainly do that, and I can put your name there, and then they can look for you or go back into, maybe onto the Sapin page. I'm not quite sure what the Sapin Hub does around that. I think you probably have to go to the marketplace. Anyway, that I don't know. That's a situation for the moderators and administrators to do. So we're back here with what are the strategies. Touched on either about paying higher rent or lower rent. So this was around that partnership model, right? And again, there are a whole lot of different variations of it, which you need to explore and see which work best for both of you. Just like I was speaking to a Facebook user around him or her, sorry, you said the guy, of him wanting to rent out his apartment to someone else to run on Airbnb. Well, the most important thing around all of this is knowing what each of you want at the end of the day. Is it that you're actually just wanting normal rental, you want it looked after so that you don't have to worry about it, or actually are you wanting as a landlord to be profitable in that? Greed is the biggest killer of both parties. So finding out what is needed is the most important thing. You might find that some landlords, they say when they watch you making a lot of money, there's a problem there. Like I always think, like, what would happen if my landlord was watching this? And this one, the rent to rent, where I'm making an extra, like I'm making 30 grand on her apartment and she's only getting 10. Is she going to look at this and go and say that I want some of that, I better increase my rental? Well, it's market related rent. So if she doesn't want me, she can just try and do it on her own. But also I know that she's like, listen, I don't want to do Airbnb. It's so stressful. And that's because she just didn't have the tips and the techniques, right? She was still old school where she was just hoping that it would all work. She just thought she could just list it and it would all work. So first thing is be clear on what both of you are wanting and be clear on what you're offering. The more skilled you are, the more that you can back your negotiation. If you are looking to rent it from someone and prove to them that you're good, you can do it, you can manage it, the more you're in the pound seat, right? You can negotiate better because you know what you're doing. So you can be confident in what it is that you're sharing. But like I mentioned, some of those strategies is you could also go to someone and say, I won't pay you rent, but look at what I can generate. And we will split this half after certain expenses are paid, right? The set expenses, the water, electricity, not the bond in that, because that is too variable. So I would do water, electricity, Wi-Fi, and obviously the consumables and that. In other words, you would subtract that from the rental and then you split that. That could be one option, and you'd need to run your numbers if splitting that would work. You could also then say, I'll pay you a base rate amount of rent, and then we do the following. We'll take off the electricity, the water, and the expenses from the month, and then we'll split it. You could say, I will pay you the rent less 20%, but I will give you 20% of the profits. So there's an 80-20 split in profits, which means that the more you generate, the more they can get an upside to that deal as well, through to a whole range of things, like I mentioned, just those things. Where a lot of landlords come in is they say, listen, my rent is 10,000 Rand, but my bond is 8. So they are wanting at least the 8 to be covered. So you could say, I will make sure that you get the 8. And then after that, we can do a profit share 50-50 after expenses, or an 80-20 split. I always like to get some benefit to the landlord that makes them want to keep me and to make it work for me and to respond to my messages quickly or to fix things quickly, because they realize that without me, they wouldn't be getting a good deal either. So those kinds of things are going to be super important as well, right? Okay, so just some last few comments and questions if they don't come in now. I also saw on the Facebook chat a while back around some comments around damage policies and Airbnb. So we know that Airbnb has a $3 million damage cover, right? So for damage stuff that happens in your property due to a guest, they have a $3 million cover. Now, some of that was covered recently in some of the groups that I'm in. We know that with the small scale stuff, like your linen and glasses and tables that are broken, or doors that are damaged because they knocked down, or couches that are broken because someone jumped on them, or just someone dropped a plate and a tile cracked. Those kinds of things you can literally submit your claim process through, and you will get the money refunded back super, super quick. I think mine fastest was like 25 seconds or something. I actually submitted all the documentation and literally I got it straight back. And I think that was about 2,500, 3,000 Rands worth of damage, right? So in this case, it was a situation of probably, I think it was more like 120,000 Rand damage, because there was a lot of water damage and a whole lot of stuff. And my sense is that, when it gets to a certain amount, probably above, like linen or some some kind of like furniture equipment, when it actually is reflooring of boards and an extensive like curtains and cupboards redone. And my experience is they're going to definitely take longer, and they're going to start finding reasons why it might not work. So to answer that person's question, it's slightly, I think it's going to be in a case by case scenario, but that they're going to obviously drag their feet around that and take a look at that. But I would assume that that's also quite rare that that's going to happen. Most of us are just, I have submitted, many different claims, and they've always been fully refunded within literally a day or less. But they're working up to probably about 4,000, 5,000 Rand, because like I say, someone smoked and they burnt holes in the kitchen table, so I had to replace that table. And it was right, the table was like 1.5, 2 grand. So those are small things. I think it's like when you're starting to ask for 15,000 Rand and 30,000 Rand, then it becomes more challenging, and you're gonna have to be a lot more careful around that, right? Okay, so some of the things as I finish off that I want to just touch base on, it still actually amazes me, and I'd be curious to know. I don't think any of my clients and students are on here, but on my cover photo on my listings, I put text on the cover photo in beautiful big writing, like things like reduced rates or self-check-in, or at the moment what you should be putting on is backup power. I've got backup batteries. Load shedding doesn't impact us. If you haven't sorted that out, you are at risk. You need to sort out backup power. Before, it was okay not to have it. Or if you had just a small little UPS that kept the router going. Now we're in this for the long haul. This is not going to go away. We know we're going to have load shedding for years. You need to sort out some kind of backup power that at least keep the lights on and the Wi-Fi, because people need to work. People want to keep watching their phones and computers. Those are things which are just non-negotiables. These little emergency lights, LED lights, it's just not going to work. You need to get something more than that. And, probably between 10 and 13,000 Rand, you can put those in place. I've actually even got it in my lower priced rental, where it's a smaller box, but it still can do the whole, it's a 1-bedroom apartment. It can still do all the lights, TV, Wi-Fi, and it can do that for a day, right? It's a small box like this. It actually still works. But those are the things you have to have, because, again, people in South Africa are going to be so penny foolish that they're actually going to say, no, not going to need this. And again, people like myself and my students are going to then dominate, because we are going to get all the bookings. We know that. It's going to make the difference. So you need to go and actually make that happen and put that in place, right? Actually want to see if I can just quickly share this. If I can share the screen for you, that might be, I'm going to see if I can actually. Let me just see here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, let me just see. Here's sharing the screen. Let's just put in. Okay, here I'm just sharing the one screen for you, and you can see what I mean by putting in some title here into the actual listing, right? I saw the photo at the beginning of our talk today, but there I've put it in there, right? It's important, and if you actually, I want to see if I can go on. So there again, like the third picture you click on, I'm saying it's got backup power. I don't want this to be a mistake. Like, I want you to know I've got backup power for all the lights, all the Wi-Fi, the TV, all that kind of stuff. That makes a difference. That makes this going to be a place that people are looking at. And if you look here, actually, at the pricing here, I am more expensive than everyone else around me, right? That you see here. This person here, the 12,000. Here we go. This person here, that's a villa. And take a look at that, right? That's a villa. It's got 5 bedrooms. I got 3 bedrooms, and I'm still more expensive, literally double than anyone else here, and I'm fully booked, right? So again, I'm telling you, if you really need the information, you must go and get it. Go get that course. Make sure you're on it. Study it. Don't do the course and then come and complain to me you're not getting occupancies, because you're probably not following those details, right? You want to know how many times I've needed to go back to people and say, you're still using your phone photographs. You need to go and get professional photographs, sort it out. I say to them, put that on the heading. And if they don't, well, then I can't help you if you're not getting the results that I'm promising you, right? So those are the kinds of things. So there we go. That's just around that. Last question. So let's see. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Facebook user again. I don't know if it's a different user, but let's just take a look. Yeah. There we go. Recently needed a place to stay in Cape Town. It was a mission to find a place with backup power. I messaged 10 hosts and none have, and will still come back to me 2 weeks after my trip. So I think I know who this person is now, but certainly 100%. There it says, this person had to go to Cape Town for work, needed power. It's just not there. People are just not doing it yet. And, it's like I had it. I'm a recurring guest to a place in Sandton. And every time I go back there, well, it has been, I can't go back any longer. I had 3 Zoom meetings on that day and it was in the dark. And I had to use my phone for the Wi-Fi because their Wi-Fi wasn't on a network. And it's crazy because she's crushing it. She gets so many bookings. And I said to her, I can't do this anymore. Your place is amazing. I love it. It's so reasonable. It's fantastic. But until you jack up this to accommodate for executives, this isn't going to work. And you know what the crazy thing is? She calls it an executive suite. I'm like, how can you call it an executive suite if for 6 hours of the day, I can't do business? So I'm promising you, these are the things you need to be doing. Otherwise, you're just not going to get those results. Make sure your titles are good. Get those photos there. Put in that you've got backup power, even in the title of your listing, backup power, and then go into luxury accommodation, whatever. Quite frankly, I'd rather have power than cotton sheets or Egyptian cotton sheets. Anyway, those are my rants, right? Okay. Okay, let's just see. Last question here, and then I'll need to sign off. Okay, I'd like to buy a property for Airbnb, but I need someone to help me find the right property to be fully booked. Of course, right? If we all had that golden key, that would give you everything that you need. Well, you kind of do have a good, at least a significantly golden key. Go get the course, right? Because in the course, I share with you how to find properties, validate them, check on the websites to see what your occupancy rates are, check to see what your projected income could be, because that's the difference. If you're going to just hope that you're going to find something, well, trust me, then everyone else is going to have found it before you. You have to do things that other people aren't willing to do, and that's definitely going to be around doing your own upskilling and research. All the guests that I have in here that are sharing with you how they're generating those hundreds of thousands of rands, that's because they went and did the material, they learned, and they figured out how to make that work, and how to not only take what someone is predicting you can get, but they're actually leveraging off it. Like, for example, if you go onto the website and you find what the projected occupancy rate is, I'm promising you that if you do the skills that I teach, you will increase that by at least 20%. 20% more than the average, which is significant, right? And like I said, I'm getting 100% this year of occupancy. And that's because I am sharing exactly what I've shared with you today, from the titles, from the pictures. I put in the backup power, and that's not a lot of money. Like 2-3 extra bookings, just once off, paid for the backup power, right? Listen, 3 nights of bookings paid for the backup power. So how, the math makes sense. So those are the things we want to really look at. Okay, so that's it from my side. I don't see any other questions. A reminder, in 2 weeks time, I'm off to Vietnam, going to see the biggest cave system in the world. I'd be curious to know if I've still got those pictures actually still here on this system. I don't think who knows? I don't think they are at the moment, but we'll have a look and see. And yeah, going there and then off to Hong Kong, going to see one of my business partners in Hong Kong, to go and do a whole lot of stuff there. I don't actually know if that's no, that's not that one. It's not a picture, which is super exciting. First time to Hong Kong. I'm looking forward to seeing what is going to happen there and what we're going to create out of that. But that's where I'm going to be in 2 weeks' time, Vietnam, then Hong Kong, and I'll come back and we'll carry on. So just from my side then, just to sign off and to say good to be here. Great questions. Thank you. I hope that you got a whole lot of relevant information from that. If you haven't got the course, you do need to go and get it. I said to Andrew Walker, the CEO of Sapin, that we're going to be increasing that price. And I said, if people are making so much money out of it, that means it's got a lot more value. We haven't increased it since it started in 2019. So you've got about 2 weeks, and I'm going to share more about that later on. But if you haven't got it, you need to get it, because it's not just by another 500 or 1,000 Rand. We're going to jump that up by probably 5 to 6 or 7,000 Rand more than what it is now. Because if you're making that amount of money from having learned those kinds of things, then it has that kind of value. So just stay tuned and we'll certainly look at that. Otherwise, certainly it's on all the websites. I think even in the description of this chat, you'll find those links as well. Otherwise, from my side, love sharing the information, love sharing and watching how people are making money, right? That's what it's all about. And of course, making success out of it and not just hoping. That's what this is all about, actually making actually putting in place those things that work and with the least amount of risk. So good from my side, and I'll certainly see you in the next stage. Good luck with Airbnb, and of course there is always that success with Robin Booth, and I shall see you on that other side. So have a good afternoon, everyone.